Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Will. I'm an CRNA, and this presentation is going to be all about 1099 CRNA. So let's start with some fast facts. About 14% of CRNAs are 1099, and that's 1099 all the way, not including W-2 CRNAs who do 1099 on the side. And as many of you probably know, most new grads try W-2 first, although some who are really gung-ho about the 1099 go straight into it. My hope is that after this presentation, you'll have a better idea about what you want to do. So a good place to start is by reviewing the differences we talked about in class. So let's do 1099 first. The good. We know that they get paid higher at an hourly rate to make up for the lack of benefits. There's flexibility in schedule, and that's the part that a lot of people find most attractive. You get to decide when you work, how often you work. If your best friend tells you about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to live on a boat in the summer, you can do that. And there's also tax and retirement advantages with the 1099, which are two big things that I'll get into later. As for the bad, you only get paid for the hours that you work. So you don't work, you don't get paid. And that could mean if your day ends early, you might be getting paid less. The big thing missing here is benefits. Especially with health care carrying the most value here. But you also need to find your own malpractice, disability, and other things. There are also added costs like business license, fees for incorporating, and attorney and CPA fees. And as a 1099, you don't have an employer to share the cost of Social Security Medicare taxes, so that's an extra 7% tax coming out of your pocket. And another thing to think about is that, over the pandemic, a lot of 1099 jobs went away. In other words, 1099 jobs aren't pandemic proof. A lot of 1099 CRNAs were out of a job for about 3 to 6 months. And if you don't have an emergency fund, that could mean not being able to afford mortgage or car payments. Now, looking at what the W-2 has to offer, it's all the things that we just said 1099 doesn't, right? So that's still getting paid if your day ends early, if you're sick, or if COVID gets really bad again. You're benefited as a W-2, and that's not just health insurance and malpractice, it's your vacation and education time. Your employer might offer student loan repayment, and there could be miscellaneous perks as well. And that all has value. And taxes as a W-2 are also easier to file. And the trade-off, of course, is that you don't control when you work. There's less pay and there's fewer tax and retirement advantages. So 1099 sounds like it has a lot of advantages. What's in it for the hospital or the surgery center? In other words, why would they prefer to contract with you instead of employing you? As it turns out, there's mutual benefit in avoiding that commitment. What they lose in higher wages to the CRNA, they gain back in not having to pay for benefits. And that includes health benefits like medical, dental, and vision, malpractice, disability, vacation, and sick days, and education time. They also get to avoid paying payroll tax. They get to dodge paying any taxes on wages if they're paid to an independent contractor versus an employee. And 1099 CRNAs get no help paying for the FICA Social Security tax and Medicare tax. So that works out to be about a 7.65% tax that the hospital or surgery center gets to skip out on paying. Also, some small hospital and surgery centers will only contract to 1099 CRNAs who are incorporated because that extra layer of liability protection shields the facility in case the corporate veil is pierced. Okay, so now we're going to take a closer look at some of the 1099 benefits I highlighted. One of the first questions CRNAs have when they think about contract words is, should I incorporate? Basically, you're deciding between being a sole proprietor or incorporating as an S Corp or a subchapter S corporation. A sole proprietorship is a basic business structure, And from a tax perspective, the owner and the business are one. On the other hand, an S Corp is a business entity separate from the owner. And from a tax perspective, all income, losses, deductions, and credits pass through to its shareholders. Now, I included some differences about the processes of opening each type of business, as well as the tax implications. But the main reasons why people start an S Corp as a 1099 are for the limited liability protections and for the savings on Social Security and Medicare taxes, which we'll talk more about. Let's now consider just the financial implications of an S Corp. We already covered the business expense tax write-offs available to the 1099s, and you get that if you're both a sole proprietor or an S Corp. S Corps get an additional tax benefit when earnings are passed through to shareholders as distribution. So follow me here. Money can be taken out of an S Corp either as a salary that you pay yourself or as distributions, in other words, profits. The IRS says that you have to pay yourself a quote-unquote reasonable salary, but the remaining money you get from your S Corp can be in the form of a corporate distribution. The benefit here is that distributions are not subject to the FICA and Medicare tax, which together is a 15.3% tax. Therefore, the larger your distribution, the less tax you'll have to pay. The other financial considerations about S Corps is there's typically a minimum annual state tax. In California, that's $800. And you also have to pay a payroll company to pay out your salary. So, going back to the question, sole proprietorship or S Corp, it comes down to whether you can save enough money in the FICA, via the FICA and Medicare taxes to justify the annual state tax and the cost of payroll. The other major benefit of being 1099 is the ability to make significantly higher retirement contributions and pay less income tax. And that's especially attractive to CRNAs who, because of graduate school, rejoin the workforce at a later age and want to make up some time. With a W-2 job in 2022, you can contribute up to $20,500 to one of these retirement accounts, either the 401k, the 403b, or the 457. As a 1099, that number is significantly larger. With the Simplified Employee Pension Plan, or the SEP plan, the employer can contribute 25% of the employee's salary up to a max of $61,000 in 2022. But to achieve that, you have to pay yourself $244,000, meaning you'll pay a lot in income tax. From a tax shelter standpoint, the solo 401k account is better because it allows the employee to contribute the same $20,500 annually that the W-2 CRNA can, and the employer can still contribute 25% of the employee's salary to make up the remaining balance of the $61,000. In this scenario, you only need to pay yourself $162,000 as compared to the $244,000, which works out to be a pretty sizable difference in income tax. Here's another figure comparing the finances between W-2 and 1099. And by private practice here, they mean 1099. I like this figure because it includes the W-2 pension and the 1099 SEP plan retirement contributions. And it also breaks down the different health benefits and adds things that sometimes are missed when comparing W-2 and 1099. Things like disability, life insurance, and attorney fees. I'm sure the numbers here are dated and that they vary from place to place, but you can see here the things that you're expected to pay for as a 1099. So who comes out ahead? And we're purely talking from a financial standpoint. It's difficult to put a price on things like flexibility that you find with the 1099 or the stability that you get with the W-2. But money is always a factor in decision making. On average, benefits work out to be 30% of the salary. So if you're deciding between two offers, one a W-2 and the other a 1099, You can do some fast math to figure out what a 1099 salary you should be negotiating for. You take the W-2 salary and add 30%. Now that's salary. Where 1099 can get ahead is if you maximize tax deductions and retirement contributions. If you're savvy and claim the office, cell phone, computer, printer, conferences you attend, the mileage from all the driving. If you use your solo 401k as a tax shelter and contribute 61k a year and maximize the non-wage distributions so you minimize what you pay in Social Security and Medicare tax. If you do all those things, then you stand a chance of making more than a W-2. That and how much you work as a 1099 all goes into the equation when determining who comes out ahead. The last thing I'll say is if your W-2 job offers a pension, which is harder and harder to come by these days, that's hard to beat. Of course, the caveat is that you're often committed to the same company for your whole career and sometimes retiring later than somebody who works 1099. Can you have the best of both worlds? The benefits and the stability from the W-2 and the higher wage and tax and retirement advantages of the 1099. Dr. Bell mentioned in class that a CPA worked out the math and found out you need between 10 to 20 hours a week of 1099 in order to break even on the added costs of extra time, energy, and the money of incorporating and paying a CPA and so on. Working part-time W-2 seems to me as the only way to accomplish that. So how do you know if 1099 is for you? Money's obviously a big consideration, but if you choose 1099, you're more than likely choosing it because it works better for you for one of these reasons listed here. Somebody who does 1099 should be savvy with finding his own health insurance, malpractice, liability, as well as taking advantage of tax deductions and maximizing retirement contributions. Are you willing to learn about how to incorporate so that you can take advantage of the retirement and liability protection? If you don't know the answers, do you know where to look for them? Are you willing to get in touch with the right CPA or attorney? And are you good at math? You'll be paying quarterly taxes instead of having them automatically taken out of your paycheck, so you have to make sure you have enough left over. And many 1099s take short contracts or work at multiple sites, so are you good at adapting to new settings or new staff and personalities? Those are things that can add stress to an already stressful job. And to go along with that, are you okay with driving a lot? I mention all this first because they tend to be the barriers to going 1099. And the biggest reason why people do 1099 is the flexibility in schedule. So you get to decide when and how often you work, and to some people that's really valuable and it's worth it to put up with all the extra work. And so that's what we all have to figure out for ourselves. So maybe after this presentation, you're sold on 1099. Now, how do you go about finding a job? Gasworks.com is a good place to start. If you haven't been on Gasworks yet, you can both look for job postings and sell yourself and advertise your services. It lets you name your price, your schedule preferences, states you're willing to work in, and if you're okay with working under medical direction or not, and more. Reaching out to locums is another option too. Just make sure that you have unlimited texting or else they'll run up your phone bill. And the old-fashioned way, by word of mouth, it's actually how a lot of CRNAs get into 1099. A lot of people start off W-2 and get convinced to do some 1099 on the side. Somebody thinks you'd be a good fit and tells you it'll be easy work and it'll pad the paycheck well, and you get roped in that way. But hopefully you learned a thing or two from this presentation so that you can make the most of your 1099 gig. All right, so if you want to know more about 1099, I want to point you in the right direction. Truman West is a CPA in California who works with CRNAs, and he has an educational course on his website that talks about this kind of content. Jeremy Stanley is a financial planner located in North Carolina who works with CRNAs. He has a blog and a podcast where he talks about the CRNA finances, and he has a couple of books on CRNA wealth and retirement. Lifeasacrna.com has some really helpful information for new grads who are looking for their first job. It was put together by a CRNA who wanted to share all of the information he compiled over the years. And I also included links to an AANA journal article and an IRS website that I used when I put this presentation together. That's it. Hope this helps.